Hey there, art nerds. I am so excited to finally be able to talk about Tonic Watercolors with you guys. These have been sitting in my art supply hoard for months, and I have finally had a chance to do a full review for them. So I am really looking forward to getting to share that with you guys today. If you are not familiar, Tonic is St. Louis Art Supply's store brand, and we have talked about a few smaller watercolor brands here on the channel, whether we're talking about stone ground or we're talking about case for making. And I'm really excited to get to talk about another American-made watercolor with you guys, especially one that has such an unusual form factor. So today we are going to swatch these. We are going to do some color mixing, and I am also going to compare these against Core, DaVinci, and Daniel Smith, so 3 other American brands, to help you guys decide if these saturated watercolors are a good fit for you and your work. Hey art nerds, so we are going to start with an unboxing, and then we're going to turn this into a review. And I have had this box sitting unopened in my studio for a while. I've been working on class stuff, and that's kind of taken up most of my time. This is not going to cut it quite literally, so I'm going to have to find a pair of scissors or a better knife. But this is a package from St. Louis Art Supply. And inside we have some books. We also have some Tonic half pans, and we're going to be talking about those today. But mostly it's just books and Tonic half pans. So this isn't meant to be a book review. I will kind of flip through why there have been no great women artists. And it looks like it is a hardbound essay. And I think most of us know that there have been great women artists. There have been lots of great women artists. They just don't get much recognition. But I am still interested in the social rationale for why women's work is considered a hobby and men's work is considered a profession. And if you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I'm Becca Hilburn. I'm a watercolor comic artist and illustrator. I am a professional artist and art educator, and I have an MFA in sequential art from SCAD. So just because I have a femme tone of voice, it does not make me not a professional. We also have the City Exhibition manga, and we've got, oh my gosh, it's the girl from Golden Kamuy, and I should know her name. It should be at the top of my head. Not feeling super great today, but anyway, Golden Kamuy is great. I recommend it. But as somebody who loves manga, I'm really excited about this, because I like talking about manga and I like talking about the art of manga. And we went to see a Dash exhibition when we went to the Kyoto Manga Museum. So I love books and things about manga. So like Manben, for example, would highly recommend. We also have the foolproof sketching and painting techniques for beginners. I should have opened this sooner because this would be so helpful for this class that I am currently teaching, because I'm always looking for new methods to help my students see things and think about things. And I'm also myself always looking for new methods to see things and think about things. And this one is very volumetric and very math centric, which really resonates with how I think about drawing. So I like it. Very charming with watercolor art. And then finally, Japanese style watercolor portraits, because I mean, just look how beautiful these are. So I'm hoping to pick up some new skills. Ooh, yes, the zones of the face, that's helpful. I'm looking to pick up some new skills. So I ordered some interesting art books from St. Louis Art Supply. But really, the reason we are here today, we are going to talk about St. Louis Art Supply's Tonic Watercolor for Fine Art. So I have here their ceramic It's larger, so it's like a ceramic ramekin set. And I've had this for a while. And then they started releasing additional colors in half pans. So I picked up some of the ones that at the time were not available in the ceramic pans, and they've been kind of back and forth. So Tonic is St. Louis Art Supply's house brand. I don't know if they themselves manufacture these or if somebody manufactures these for Tonic, but this is their house brand. And I have talked about Case for Making's handmade watercolors, and I have some Blick watercolors and some Utrecht watercolors. So, and we talked about Jerry's Artorama watercolors a lot in the past. So I thought it would be neat to check out Tonic watercolors with you guys. Now, if you are new, I mentioned I am a watercolor comic artist and illustrator. I make the comic 7-inch Cara, and it is in watercolor. And the vast majority of what I do, what I create, is watercolor. And I have been reviewing watercolor supplies for over 10 years now, starting first on a blog and also on the Sequel Lab podcast, which was the podcast that my school produced. And now I review art supplies on YouTube, and I bring my knowledge into the classes that I teach. So that is kind of, not only do I have a master's of fine art as well as a bachelor's of fine art to bring to the table, but I also have a lot. I have thousands of illustrations, hundreds of comic pages, and years and years and years and years of watercolor review experience to bring to the table to share with you guys today. Let's take a look at what we've got here, and then we'll head on over to the desktop to check them out on the St. Louis Art Supply site. So we have the core mixing set, 6 colors in large porcelain pans, plus a free empty pan, light, fast, high chroma colors, extremely pigment dense, warm and cool primary pairs for perfect color mixing. And you get 6 of these, and we'll go over the colors in a minute. And they are 0.71 ounces. They recommend that when they are empty, you can reuse the Tonic pans as mini palette cups. The colors in this set are Permanent Yellow, number 47, PY54, Signal Yellow, number 40, PY65, Federal Red, 002, PR254, Federal Red, 002, PR54, Quinacridone Magenta, number 325, PR122, Ultramarine Blue, number 254, PB29, and Pthalo Cyan, number 230, PB15 to a ratio of 3. Did you know each Tonic watercolor pan contains 7 times as much paint as the standard half pan? And then they have more info at federalcolor.com. They're made in the United States, and they conform to ASTM D4236. They are located at 4011 Pepin Street, St. Louis, Missouri. So again, here are the colors in this set. I think we can finally open these, and I have inside, here is our Federal. Does this come off? Is this a sticker, or is it just meant to be a sticker on the back of this? I guess so. It's a nice little ceramic mini palette though, very cute. And then here are here are our watercolors. So these are going to be larger. This could be great if you work with a large brush, if you paint bigger things, or if you eat paint like I seem to eat paint. Let us start here with Signal Yellow. Tonic porcelain pan, 20 grams. Activate Tonic with a wet brush. The powerful pigments in your porcelain pan will instantly start to flow. Apply Tonic to wet or dry paper. Mix freely with other watercolors and have fun. Let me know what that says. Somebody do me a favor and translate that for me. And for the most part, there is some plastic, but it seems like it's wrapped in cardboard, which is recyclable. The stickers seem to be uncoated stickers, so they would be more likely to be recyclable. I'm having a hard time getting this open. That said, I have Sjogren's, and Sjogren's causes a lot of hand motor problems, and I'm also trying not to just rip open this box. And I guess that is just not in the cards for me. I'm gonna have to rip it open. So inside is our, wow, that is pretty, our porcelain pan. It is plastic wrap, probably to keep the dust off of it. Held tight with washi tape. That is a lot of paint. Sticker on the back, and then we also have one of these delicious do not eat desiccator packets to help make sure that it stays nice and dry. So this would be Signal Yellow. I do wish they had the color written on it, whether it's tape or whether it's something on the bottom. That would be really helpful. So this is the postcard that they've been sending out to everybody. Next is our permanent yellow. Oh, and our light fast information is on the side here too. This is information though that I do wish they would put on the bottom of the porcelain pans. Oh, this one's much easier. This one has actually shrunk pretty significantly. That's pretty common with watercolors. And I will have all of the information, like pigment information, like fast information, in the description for you guys. It is a little bit tacky, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I am interested to see what the humectant in these are. Then we have Federal Red. Oh, it's a little more extreme masking tape. Now, nobody asked, but if we're moving in a direction where we're trying to move away from plastic packaging, glassine bags with a little bit of tape would work really well for this. This one is even more tacky. You get so much paint with these, holy smokes. And they're so brilliant too. They're even more brilliant than the swatches that we're seeing here. Then we have Pthalo Cyan. And I think the desiccator packet is just to help make sure these don't get really sticky. And this is Louisiana, so they're already a little sticky. That's not their fault. So that's Pthalo Cyan. Then Ultramarine. Some of these are packed tighter than others, so some of them are harder to get open. I do actually really like the packaging though. It's rather appealing. It's fairly simple, but brightly colored, very straightforward. I like that. Not overly distracting. I like that these are in ceramic dishes. This is the only one so far that's seen a little bit of cracking, and it's mostly just surface cracking. The, not pans, the palettes, the little dishes themselves have a really nice heft to them as well. Then we have Quin Magenta. So, you know, a very good basic kind of 6 color mixing set, sort of similar to what we've seen from Daniel Smith. You definitely can mix anything you're looking for, or almost anything you're looking for, with a basic six color set. I'll even link my Daniel Smith 6 color video in case you're looking for some inspiration for that. These definitely have like a hand put together vibe to them, but I like it, right? I like the different masking tapes. I like the inclusion of the desiccator packet. Like, I don't know, these are hitting the right spot so far. These are hitting like somebody knew what they were doing. I do wish all of these colors had, instead of the Federal sticker at the bottom, color name pigment info, light fast info. And then this is Quin Magenta. So here is the extra. You could fill it with a color that you like. It'd be cute if I could cram my little half pans in this. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to store these though. So I will be honest with you guys. I am actually going to keep the desiccators because I can actually slip these in with my original watercolor paintings and they'll help protect them. So you should not eat these, but you can recycle these or reuse them. So that's my plan for that. I am going to, theoretically I could salvage the bags also, but I'm trying so hard not to become a hoarder. I'm really fighting those tendencies. So these are going to go straight in the trash. And as for the boxes, which are really rather nice, if only Louisiana did recycling, I'm going to copy down the information from the boxes and then those will end up in the trash as well. So I started out with the mixing set, and then St. Louis Art Supply introduced some half pans as well. So I picked up Oxide Red 012 PR 101, Phthalo Evergreen 130 PG 7, and Oxide Yellow number 43 PY 42. And I believe they now offer all of the colors that they had only in the ceramic palettes. Those are now also available in half pan. So I guess I should have either hurry up and review these things or waited longer to review these things. I hit the exact wrong zone. So the back of the half pan reads, touch your brush to a tonic half pan and you'll see the difference right away. Tonic reactivates instantly when you add water, then moves freely across wet or dry paper. Dilute tonic for subtle washes or use it full strength for saturated sharp marks. Triple milled and made from ultra premium gum Arabic, tonic already belongs to the very highest class of fine art watercolors, and we're just getting started. Now, I like St. Louis Art Supply. If I don't find it at my local brick and mortar David's, I will probably try to order it from St. Louis and then I'll order it from Blick. Do they have the cheapest prices? Absolutely not. But they carry unusual things and I don't know, like they just have neat stuff there. So I like giving them my business. That said, as always, any claim you make is a claim that can be held against you. So if you're promising me fine art watercolors, I am going to be comparing you to fine art watercolors. Hopefully they don't let me down. So this is our Oxide Red. It does need a dot of gum Arabic just to hold it in the pan, not a big deal. And I do wish that there was any kind of labeling or marking on the package itself. I also don't love that the tape dot that they used is still sticky. That's like I have sensory ick, so that's a me thing probably. Next is Phthalo Green. Same information, and all of these were purchased out of pocket with funds raised from my Patreon. So if you like my reviews, you like what I do, and you want to help me continue to do it, please consider joining me at patreon.com/nattosoup. So there is Phthalo Evergreen. I'm trying to keep everything together because I'm gonna have to label all of this. That's kind of the only way I can actually use it, you know. And then Oxide Yellow. In general, from what I've seen so far, these seem very well made, really nice colors. They seem very rich. So I'm really excited about playing around with these. So this is like the included postcard that they throw in with basically every order. This is not necessarily just their mixing set. I guess this is kind of where they started. So Federal Red, Signal Yellow, Permanent Yellow, these three are in the mixing set. Phthalo, Cyan, Ultramarine, Quinacridone, Magenta, also in the mixing set. Phthalo Evergreen, Prussian Blue, and Carbon Black were not. And I actually don't have, no, I have Phthalo Evergreen. I do not have Carbon Black or Prussian Blue because I figure with these colors here, I can probably mix almost anything that I want. The only thing I would include, and that's a maybe, is an indigo. And to be fair, the Prussian Blue does look like an indigo, but it also is close enough with the Phthalo Cyan that I didn't necessarily think I needed it. Effortless color. Tonic watercolors are highly concentrated. You'll notice how heavy our porcelain pans feel in your hand. Add water. We suggest using a dropper to wet the pan directly. And actually I have one of these Klein bottles from St. Louis Art Supply, and I use that thing literally every day. That is such a good, like, if I could recommend one watercolor supply that you wouldn't think of, this thing is it. I love this thing. All right. So add water, and tonic instantly transforms into fluid, intense, transparent paint. It's deliciously brushable, incredibly vibrant, and easy to mix. I don't know how I can rate you on deliciously brushable. I've been writing fiction lately, including fan fiction, and I've definitely found some new uses for the word delicious, but I think this one, please don't eat your paint, y'all. All right, so we have the letter number, or letter. The letter indicates the price group. Okay, we've seen that across various brands of watercolor, very normal. So it seems to range from A to C is what I'm seeing here. The B on these, oh, that's 8. That's the light fastness. I'm sorry. Okay. Then the light fastness, and they are using the blue wool scale, which is phenomenal. That is the only standardized light fast testing that I am aware of, is the blue wool scale. So that's really great, actually. So in the little star, it's going to be 7 through 8 is excellent. Let's see what colors we have here. So excellent, 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 and then I have excellent and excellent. So that's good. So we should have excellent light fastness according to the blue wool scale. And then we have our transparency information. They kept it actually pretty simple with just opaque, or rather transparent, semi-opaque, and opaque. So some companies will have a fourth one, semi-transparent, a little lighter than semi-opaque. Some people can't really tell the difference, you know what I mean? So I think having 3 is good. We do not have any fully opaque ones here. Yeah, and I just want to double check against this. I am actually not seeing the opacity information for this one. I'm sure their website has it. And then our pigment number. And from what I am seeing, everything we have here today is a single pigment watercolor. And they are calling themselves watercolor for fine art. I'm getting a little bit of Core vibes here. Core is one of my favorite brands. So, you know, not a bad thing. Hopefully it can live up to the hype. And then it says colors are only as accurate as printing technology allows, which is true. And I appreciate them disclosing that. I kind of get the impression they want to work with artists. This is an artist product. They're going to talk to artists like we're intelligent artists. And I respect that. All right, y'all, let's turn our attention to our virtual desktop. We are over here at St. Louis Art Supply. I've talked about them before. I've done unboxings about them before. We don't have any kind of relation. I don't think they know about me at all. But I like shopping with them, and I like supporting small businesses when I can as a fellow small business. So they have more of the tonic sets, including this classic set of 12, which probably contains all of the colors I have here, plus a white and a black. There might be like a Prussian blue in there as well. We'll find out in a minute. I guess it's the same thing in different colors. That's what I guess I'm getting here. Not super sure, actually. Anyway, so the classic set of 12 half pans is $80. And then here are the more like classic of their porcelain pans. So for example, the Tonic Watercolor Core mixing set of 6 would be $95, but this is a tremendous amount of paint. So if you're watching this and you're new to watercolor and you're like, well, I don't really know which one I should get, probably the half pans. You would only want this amount of paint if you paint as much as I do. which is like a pathological amount. So for the porcelain pans, they seem to start at $14.95 and then go up from there. And just keep in mind that it said that each of these porcelain pans is like 7 fills of a half pan. So typically the way I like to work is that I like to work from tubes that I've poured into half pans, and generally I can get anywhere from 3 to 5 fills from a tube before I need to buy another tube. So honestly, I would say these are still, if they are actually what they say they are, if it is the amount that you're actually getting, I would say that these are cheaper in the long run than the professional grade tubes that I like to buy. They also have their watercolor medium. They now have like a trio set with the, it looks like ultramarine blue, one of the yellows, and then Quinacridone, Quin Magenta. And they also have dot cards. So if you're watching this and you want to see if these are a good fit for you, $6 gets you the dot card, gets you to the mixing set that you can test. This was not available when in fact, the half pans weren't available. They're really trying to make this, it seems like, more accessible to people who are just curious about these. And I really appreciate that they're trying to make this, because like when I bought mine, it was the ceramic pans like these and the set, and that was it. They didn't even have like oxide yellow. Their color selection was pretty limited. I'm trying to kind of find out how large their color selection is. It is nice to see, and in fact it actually doesn't seem like it's that large a selection, and it kind of seems like they have it in both the ceramic and in the half pan. So let's count. Okay, we got black, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So honestly, if this is correct, it looks like it's the same as in the set. So if you buy the classic set, that's basically the entire Tonic line. Tonic Watercolor is made right here in our St. Louis HQ with a unique formula that we developed over 2 years of experimentation and research. We designed Tonic for maximum pigmentation, and you'll notice that a pan of Tonic is more concentrated than many other artist grade watercolors. Now see, they're flip-flopping here because on their packaging, they refer to this as Tonic Watercolor for Fine Art. And then they're referring to these as artist grade. Now, professional grade has a specific meaning. Student grade has a specific meaning. Artist grade does not. Master grade does not. So I am not sure where they want me to classify these. So with just a few drops of water, you can make bold, saturated marks on wet or dry paper. To make typical translucent watercolor washes, you'll need to add more water than you might expect. Most tonic colors start out semi-opaque because of their high pigment load, but they open up with water, becoming light and subtle as they're diluted. And I'm looking forward to seeing how these how these handle. We're not just going to talk about watercolors today. We're going to swatch them. So this would be ultramarine blue. That's one of the colors we're going to be looking at. So they have information about this color. It's a single pigment, excellent light fastness, it's granulating, and it's non-staining. I wonder if they offer that for all of the colors. I hope so, because that would make it a little more accessible to people who might be familiar with art supplies, familiar with acrylics, but maybe not with watercolor. So same thing, except high staining, which would be true for a Quin, and transparent, which is also typically true for a Quin. Oh my goodness. They have a lot of information, a lot of literature. At any concentration, Tonic is free-flowing. It is easy to load onto a wet brush, easy to lift from its pan or from paper, easy to move the brush across watercolor paper. Some brands of watercolor are too sticky or slow-moving, so they probably have a lot of oxgall in this. Are too sticky or slow-moving to allow paintings on dry paper, but with Tonic, you don't need to pre-wet the page for most techniques. I have not found too many professional grade watercolors that were too sticky or slow moving. And I do a lot of dry over dry techniques on my comic pages. So I don't know what y'all are using, but y'all are an art supply store, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Our extra large porcelain pan. This is our signature package for Tonic Watercolor, a large hand-poured porcelain pan containing 20 grams of solid watercolor. That's approximately 7 times the net weight of a typical half pan of watercolor paint. Now that's an average because different pigments have different weights. With its huge size and affordable price, Tonic is one of the best value products in fine art materials today. So they're referring again themselves in the fine art, so not necessarily student grade. Now, I will also point out, in case you do not know, comics are not considered fine art. Do I agree with that? No. But I know where the art market sees people like me. So what I do would not necessarily be considered fine art. Plus, when you're done using a Tonic pan, you can easily wash out the porcelain dish for use as a palette or refill with your favorite large tube of watercolor. They measure 45 millimeters across. These are made with fine acacia gum. One element of our recipe is highly traditional. We use specifically sourced and carefully tested gum arabic as the binder for Tonic watercolors. Gum arabic, which is the plant-based medium of virtually all watercolors. Yeah, a lot of them use honey though, and then coral uses aquazole, but yeah, sure, broad strokes. Varies wildly in quality and consistency. As we learned over dozens of materials tests, I'd actually love to see the blog posts about that because that's kind of my jam. Some grades and species of gum arabic are totally unsuitable for watercolor. Some are merely acceptable. The best quality gum arabic, which is what we use in Tonic, offers incredible transparency, flexibility, and handling. That's why our Tonic watercolor medium is noticeably clearer than many of the other brands on the market. Light fast modern pigments. All Tonic colors are light fast with ratings of 7 or 8 on the 8-point blue wool scale. Paintings made with Tonic colors are suitable for commissioned work and for long-term display under appropriate gallery conditions. And then these are triple milled. Sometimes they'll refer to themselves as watercolors. Sometimes they kind of avoid using that phrasing. No animal products. We're pleased to let you know that Tonic contains no animal-derived products, so that would mean no oxgall. Unlike many watercolors, Tonic does not contain oxgall. Instead, we use modern surfactants to achieve the same effect. To achieve the same effects as traditional animal-derived recipe. And then Federal Color is the manufacturing department at St. Louis Art Supply, available at our own shop and from other great indie retailers. Federal Color products are artist-made, professional quality. Okay, so this is the first time I have seen Tonic referred to as professional quality. So they consider themselves professional quality. That is going to be the scale that I'm going to be judging them on. So Winsor Newton, M. Graham's, Core, DaVinci, Daniel Smith, those sort of things. Professional quality and design with contemporary creatives in mind. And then here are the more details and what else you might buy with it. And then, so Federal Color, to my knowledge, kind of started with like liquid inks from them, like mixable liquid inks, like the Optimist line, which seems really nice and interesting, and I'm really intrigued by it. However, when they released Tonic, it seemed like it was the same sort of thing in a format that's so much easier for me to use, so I just went with this instead. It also comes in these like larger jars. So I am wondering if the Optimist colors, I mean, you see them using them with dip pens. It might be like an acrylic paint, or it might be like an India ink sort of base. Oh, okay, there we go. I was like, nothing's coming up. Kind of seems like Federal Color might also refer to their house brand because they've got some Japanese measuring products that they are listing as Federal Color. And I'm just kind of curious what their binder is for this. Natural shellac, a beautiful organic resin, light fast pigments. Started this in 2015, so it would be considered like an India ink. All right, well, anyway, that's kind of neat, and I thought you guys would be interested in it. So since these pans and ceramic dishes did not come labeled, I did have to label them myself, and I'm still wondering what I can store them in, because these are actually a good amount deeper than your average half pan, so I'm not really sure yet how I'm going to store these. But it is finally time for us to swatch the Tonic Watercolors. To aid us in our swatching quest, I am going to be using Blick's Premier Cotton Rag watercolor paper. This is what I use for all of my watercolor swatchings. And as though by magic, we have our black line to test for opacity. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing basic swatching. We're going to be looking for opacity. We're going to be looking for granulation. We're going to be looking for how the colors wash out as we add water. We're also going to do a little bit of color mixing since this is a mixing set. So we're going to be mixing some secondary colors using both optical mixing as well as atomic mixing, and we are going to be doing a wet into wet test where we see how the colors blend into each other, how they flow, how they move, and then depending on how all this goes, we may even have a field test where I paint a watercolor illustration or a watercolor bookmark using these paints. Now, these do recommend that you add a little bit of water to them, so I figured I would. So we're going to pre-activate them, give them a chance to suck up some of that water. I am already smelling something. It definitely has the same sort of smell that I get from some of the Chinese watercolors that I've reviewed. We are seeing a little bit of color lightening as it kind of absorbs the water. And I have here a Princeton Neptune watercolor brush that's going to be perfect for these larger pans. So if you pre-activate it, it does pick up a good amount of paint. I'll do a mass tone, and then I'll do a swatch out, clean the brush, and then add some water. We only have 9 colors to do, so, you know, there's really not any point in time lapsing this. I do like the larger pan size. Quite honestly, it feels rather decadent having such a large pan. So if you're a fan of Gensai style watercolor, in terms of the pan size, these offer a similar sort of thing. Although I will say that Gensai is a little cheaper than this, but I would say also that these are fairly priced for their size, at least so far. So no scrubbing, very immediate payoff. However, I am noticing rather than granulation, we are getting color floods. And it just could be because of how finely milled these are. Or it could be one of the surfactants that they have included to kind of help simulate oxgall. That said, if you're a vegan and you want to use vegan watercolor products, that does make this easier. Now, let's move on to our half pans. It's going to be a little more challenging. One of the things I liked about the ceramic pans is that they are so heavy, you don't have to hold them in place. You can just have them out. So here is our, I believe, which one are you? Oxide yellow. Our Pthalo evergreen. And it's a very nice color. It's not overly cool the way phthalo greens can be. And then finally, our oxide red. You would definitely want a mixing palette of some sort just to kind of help with the color control, because these do really pick up a lot. Considering I have a good amount of space, I also want to do some granulation swatches to see if we can force some of these colors to granulate rather than just filling the whole area. So in the forced granulation test, I noticed that these paints disperse a lot. Our next tests are going to be optical and atomic color mixing. And for that, I went ahead and I grabbed a ceramic plate to help me with the color mixing. Since this is the mixing set, we should be able to mix some really nice secondary colors. We're going to start by laying down our primary color lines for our optical mixing, and then we're going to move on to atomic. So one of the things that I have noticed with these paints is that a little goes such a long way with these. When it comes to color mixing, this is particularly true with the red, as it can be very overpowering. That said, it's decently easy to make good secondary mixes, although I kept confusing myself while mixing these, so don't take my mistakes as a problem with the paints themselves. But I was pretty happy with the kind of secondary mixes that I could create, and I was happy with the saturation that I was able to achieve with these mixes. So while all this is drying, I'm also going to go ahead and do the wet into wet test in that little square there. I would recommend that you don't even pre-activate these. They activate very quickly, and if you leave water on the paint, you will end up picking up way too much paint and wasting a lot of paint that way. These are so quick to activate. I would also encourage you to let them dry out fully before putting them away, and consider putting them away with the desiccator packets that came with the set. The two oxides have interesting granulation. I'm iffy on the yellow oxide as a replacement for yellow ochre, but the red oxide is really nice, and it is a good Venetian red or Indian red dupe. I did notice a little melting and reactivation with these optical lines. I tried not to just glop paint on the paper, and I tried to give these enough time to dry, but it may have been put on a little bit thick because, as we talked about earlier, color control can be a challenge with these. These tonic watercolors are pretty interesting. They are really saturated. They are a whole lot of watercolor, and they activate extremely quickly. And honestly, if you leave water, like if you pre-activate them, you're going to end up with too much paint. And they can be really challenging to control. You definitely want a mixing surface. And with the reds especially, a little really goes a long way. They have a real tendency to just kind of take over. These are definitely interesting watercolors, and I do want to play with them more, but I am kind of concerned at my ability to be able to control them without just wasting a bunch of paint in my water cup, because you attempt to pick up a little and you end up picking up a lot. So one thing I would advise is don't even bother pre-activating these, and do try to give them plenty of time to dry out. And that should make controlling them a little bit easier. Also, for the ones that have like more of a rim, you can kind of squeegee some of the paint off, and that'll help somewhat with paint control. In general, I was able to mix some pretty decent secondary mixes. I did end up kind of confusing myself with what colors I had already mixed. I might just be having kind of a headachy kind of day, but I'm able to get some really fiery oranges, which should be no surprise. That red is intense. Some pretty decent greens, and I think if I'd had more room to play around with the secondary mixes, I could have gotten some even more interesting greens and some nice purples as well. In terms of the wet into wet test, I find that some colors just really tend to take over. So the Quinacridone Magenta, the Federal Red, those seem to just really kind of dominate when you add them. Whereas the Ultramarine Blue has this really beautiful large flake granulation, and it's kind of a gentle color. It's very easy for that color to be overwhelmed. Same kind of goes for the yellow oxide and even the red oxide. The granulating colors just don't have the oomph that the staining colors seem to have. So one of the things I want to do is I feel with the words that they use on their website, I feel like they want to be compared to other popular American fine art watercolors. So I want to compare them to Core, and I actually don't know where my mixing palette is, and I love that palette so much. I'm upset that I can't find it, but these are the colors that I use to refill it. So this should be basically maybe minus a blue. I think I don't have the Pthalo blue in here. Yeah, it looks like I don't have the Pthalo blue, but in general, these are the colors that would be in the Core mixing set. And then I also have the DaVinci mixing set right here. So it's not necessarily going to be one-to-one, but it's going to be pretty similar. And I'm going to go dig up my Daniel Smith mixing set as well. So that'll give us a few popular American brands to compare these paints to. So this is what we're going to be testing. We're going to be testing Tonic. I've got DaVinci. I've got Core in tubes, so I'm just going to be testing it straight from the tube. And I have the Daniel Smith Essential Mixing Set that's been put into this little pocket palette. This is a few years old, but I mean, honestly, a lot of the colors still look great, so I don't think that'll be a problem. And hopefully that'll give us some information that'll give us a basis of comparison about where these paints stand in relation to other US-based professional grade watercolors. Looking at my show notes, I don't actually have any notes during the swatch off, which, and we're going to talk about this later, kind of tells me that all of these paints handled very similarly. There were no issues. There wasn't anything particularly stand out. There weren't any colors that I struggled with. There weren't any colors that I think you should like specifically buy from any one particular brand. Basically, it means that all of these brands handle fairly similarly for the purposes of this test. And I do have standalone reviews for all of the brands that we have talked about today. Some of them are older reviews, so if you guys are interested in me revisiting them, or if you want to hear if I've updated my opinion, I mean, basically, no, I still really like all of these paints. That's why I chose them for this swatch off. So with the Core, as we talked about earlier, I couldn't find the mini palette. I do think that would have been the fairest, but these are mostly the same colors that are in the mini palette. These are the paints that I used to refill the mini palette. Core watercolors set up beautifully in half pans, and I have a lot of Core colors in my Daily Driver watercolor palette. These are made by Golden Acrylics, and they are some of my favorite watercolors. They are very saturated. If you're the sort of person who thinks watercolor can only be pastel, or that's one of the reasons you don't care for watercolor, Core will change your mind on that. I like bright, vibrant colors. If you guys have seen my art, you will know what I'm talking about. I do a lot of like flowers and kind of pastoral, sweet sort of scenes, but I love saturated, vivid color. I see the world in vivid color. So that's what I like to paint in, and Core is able to deliver that. But I did find that Tonic and Core handle very similarly in kind of the best of ways. So if you like Core, but there's certain colors that you just use them so quickly that they're cost prohibitive, Tonic might be able to scratch that itch for you. I also really like DaVinci paints. This is going to come up a million times probably, but they are the people who are manufacturing Cheap Joe's American Journey paints. And I know that the fate of Cheap Joe's is kind of up in the air right now. If you follow them on Instagram, there's been a little bit of back and forth of we're going out of business. Oh, wait, no, we might not go out of business, or they might save one store. So we will have to wait and see. It was a delightful chain in the Appalachian region that I always enjoyed visiting when I was living in Tennessee or when I was visiting friends in North Carolina. So I would be sorry to see it go. I like Cheap Joe's. They always have kind of quirky stuff. But DaVinci manufactures their American Journey paints for them. So if you like those paints, you can still find them in DaVinci. And this is another American-made company. Finally, with the Daniel Smith set, these have been set up in a pan setup like this for several years now. These were a gift from my friend Kabocha a while back, so thank you. See, they're still getting use. And this is their mixing set, so it's going to have some of the same colors that the Tonic mixing set has, and I thought it was a very fair comparison. Now, Core, DaVinci, and Daniel Smith, I have several of them in my daily driver palette, so these are brands that I use and that I like. So over here are our Tonic watercolors, including the 3 that I bought open stock. Up here are the Core watercolors from Tube, and I really wish I could have found my mixing palette because it would have been much more apples to apples. Dried out watercolors that were reconstituting, but I have to say that Core watercolors reconstitute beautifully. They are some of my favorite watercolors to work with. I have a lot of videos here on the channel where I'm using Core watercolors. I just really, really like them. Then down here are the DaVinci pans. I also really like DaVinci. This is another company where I will buy the tubes and refill them, although some of them you can tell were factory filled. It's just high quality watercolors that I really like. And then over here are the Daniel Smith. These are the essential mixing colors, the essential 6. And they'd been dried out in half pans. I haven't touched these in like 5 years, and they came back to life like immediately. I didn't even spray them down. The only one that might be a little weird is the black, but I think that's a lunar black that I put in there to add some grit and texture because this was meant to like go with me to do plein air painting. But I found all of these watercolors vibrant, quick to activate, lots of color, easy to handle for the most part. I know I was complaining earlier that the Tonic watercolors, it can be a little easy to pick up too much color, but from what I am seeing with these swatches, they're very comparable to these other popular American brands. And honestly, Core is kind of expensive for a tube watercolor. Now, a little lasts a really long time with Core, so I don't really feel like it's actually expensive. DaVinci, you can get DaVinci as Cheap Joe's watercolors. They manufacture the Cheap Joe's watercolors, so if one of them is cheaper than the other, you can go with that. But I think they're a pretty fair priced product, another little goes a long way sort of thing. And Daniel Smith tends to be everywhere, so I really think these are very comparable. I guess I'm only really going to be able to comment. Nothing super stands out to me. So I'm only really going to be able to comment when I actually get to painting with the Tonic watercolors. But just in a swatch off situation, they seem pretty similar to the other 3 popular brands. I mean, it's going to like, you know, vary based on like color selection, what pigments certain brands carry. Core uses Aquazol, which this has been sitting out in full light for multiple years now, and it's still very, very pale. It was basically translucent when I bought it. I don't actually have any gum arabic handy, but gum arabic is much more yellow than Aquazol. Tonic is claiming to use a very pure form of gum arabic that's very clear. I just haven't seen it. That's why I'm saying claiming. I believe them. So the gum arabic used can sometimes change how like your warmer blues look. It can make them look more yellow or more muddy.
but I actually think I really love the granulation in the Tonic Watercolors. I'm glad I got that big pan because that's going to be really useful for painting skies. And I think the granulation in Core is actually a little bit finer. It looks a smidgeny bit more purple, a little warmer, but not, it's more like a matter of preference than like detriment. Whereas the Daniel Smith Ultramarine Blue has never been like my super favorite. I like a lot of Daniel Smith colors. Their Ultramarine Blue has never been my favorite of the Ultramarine Blues. It just doesn't have enough granulation and it isn't quite clean enough for me to be super excited about it. The DaVinci Ultramarine Blue is not quite as purpley blue. It's kind of a little more blue than the Daniel Smith, but not a whole lot. But I think it really, at this point, just kind of boils down to what kind of colors you like, what colors you like in a mixing set. The Federal Red is like a really bright fire engine red, whereas Core in their mixing set uses a Pyro Red, as well as, I don't have the Pyro Red, I have the Alizarin Crimson. And then with, I forgot what Daniel Smith is using. I think that is a Scarlet Lake though, so that's really more of like an orange, and it really at that point kind of boils down to, well, what do you like to mix with? I would say the Federal Red and DaVinci Red are pretty similar. DaVinci Red uses PR 254 and Federal Red, Federal Red uses PR 254, so they're using the same pigments. They may be buying them from the same manufacturer. So at that point it's like, well, do you want to buy a tube or a pan, or do you want to buy a ginormous puck of paint in a nice little ceramic ramekin? So at that point, it kind of starts to feel like, well, what form factor works better for you and how you like to paint? But it's kind of heartening that they're all pretty similar because I like DaVinci, I like Daniel Smith, and I like Core. So it tells me that I will probably like Tonic Watercolors. I mean, Federal is like the parent name and then Tonic is the sub name. I'll probably like these as well. When it comes to yellow, so this is a yellow ochre, this is a yellow oxide. I typically do prefer a yellow. I think yellow ochres and yellow oxides are pretty much the same thing. This is PY43 and oxide yellow is PY42. So they're pretty, not the same, but pretty close. I found that yellow oxide granulated a little bit differently than what I would like for skin tones. It might not work for the teeny tiny faces that I like to paint. So, you know, yellow ochre might be something that I prefer to use over that. And I don't think they carried a burnt sienna because I love burnt sienna and I would have purchased a burnt sienna. In fact, I have a burnt sienna here and a burnt sienna here. And I should have a burnt sienna with my Core and I just didn't swatch it. But that's a color that I use a lot. So it's, if they'd had a burnt sienna, I would have gotten a burnt sienna. I think the real difference with Tonic is like your options are half pan or the giant puck, and they only have a certain number of colors. So it could be a really good way to get colors that you use all the time and you really like, to get them in a larger amount at a lower price point, rather than, you know, buying the tube. Because I think this tube would just about fill up this puck. You know what I mean? So it probably really boils down to minute differences that I will probably only notice when I'm actually painting with these. This is Post Becca, and I have looked everywhere, and I thought I definitely took show notes while I was working on this field test, and I cannot find them anywhere, and I'm so annoyed at myself because I know I definitely had thoughts about these. So for some of these watercolor reviews, I've been painting bouquets, and it's typically when I don't necessarily have enough colors that I feel like I could confidently do a Lilliputian Living or a Cara-based field test. I don't have enough colors to paint people with confidence, but I can paint flowers with confidence, so that's what I decided to do. Also, people don't resonate so much with like my Lilliputian Living stuff. So, I'm an artist who has to earn money to live in this world. And so I figured I would do some subject matter that people might find more broadly appealing. So I love flowers. I know a lot of y'all love flowers. This is Louisiana Irises, which is one of my favorite flowers. And I painted this right after the Louisiana Festival de la Fleur. which was in Lafayette, Louisiana. So we went up to Lafayette to see all the beautiful Louisiana irises at Moncus Park, and then we went to the festival and we had a really good time, and I left feeling really inspired. So I wanted to do some iris stuff because they're my favorite flower, and they are kind of at risk for the absolute stupidest of reasons. They love to grow in ditches and in swamps and in wetlands, and guess what Louisiana loves to kill? I love it. As a Louisiana girl, I love how stupid we can be about these beautiful things. Just throw them in the garbage can, right? Who cares, right? Who needs beautiful wild irises in their lives anyway? Anyway, my parish puts poison in the ditches to kill everything. Love it. So that's not really relevant to these flowers, and I'm sorry about that. It's just a heartbreaking thing that I am trying to fight back against, and Joseph and I actually have a lot of Louisiana irises that we have planted. They're nursery grown. We didn't take wild irises, and we've planted them in our flower bed so that there's something to pollinate with the swamp in our area. Anyway, in general, I find these watercolors very easy to use. I did find the granulation to be a little bit large, but that could be because I'm working on a ceramic palette and it's evaporating out, and it may be forcing more granulation. I am working on Arches watercolor paper, which is what I use for most of my field tests at this point. It is their cold press paper, so it does have an assertive texture to it, and it can handle a lot of layers, which is what you guys see me doing here today. And I am trying to force some granulation with the irises as well in order to introduce other colors. Because if you've ever looked at Louisiana irises, they're not all one color. There's so many different varieties, and you get a lot of color variation. And there are these beautiful like ultraviolet blues and these like red violets and just all these colors in Louisiana irises that I really wanted to try and capture and try to paint. And as always, I am working from reference. This isn't based on any one specific bouquet. It's an amalgamation of like 6 different bouquets and me adding in some flowers here and there. Just colors I thought would work well with the colors that I have, as well as flowers that I thought would work well in a bouquet like this. So just me kind of trying to set these paints up for success while still testing them fairly. So still testing out color mixing and color layering, and whether or not there's any opacity to them. And I did find that there wasn't quite as much opacity as I would have thought. I thought this would have stood out a little bit more against that background pour that I did earlier on. So I was a little bit surprised about that. But one of the beautiful things about all of these bouquet field tests, and I've done several at this point, is they all handle a little bit differently, and they all kind of show you what paints are good at and what they're not good at. It doesn't really help me as a watercolor comic artist in that regard, but it does help me as like a floral artist and someone who enjoys just painting nature in general. So here's a close-up so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about the granulation, and me also trying to force some additional colors in there. You can also see where I've set it up to do some color layering with the leaves, where we have kind of a cool blue down early on, and I'll probably go over that with like a lemony sort of yellow. Or no, I proved myself wrong. I used the Viridian instead. Anyway, these are very easy to use. The biggest thing I think that I struggle with is the ceramic palettes are large. They don't stick very well to my desk. And I do have actually a Teflon surface that makes it easier to clean off my desk. That ugly white stuff is Teflon. So that could also be part of the problem. But I think if St. Louis Art Supply figured out a way to pallettify their larger pans, that would be really helpful. Obviously, the half pans already can be popped into a palette. It would be really cool to see them try and find a bioplastic for the half pans, or work with someone for ceramic half pans. I know those are something that exists. And I think the only reason I care about that is because those are a little bit more eco-friendly. It's less plastic into the world. And it would just be a really cool way to stand out. But it would be expensive. And I would say that their half pans are actually very fairly priced. They're fairly inexpensive. They're fairly accessible. So that might not be the best direction to move in, but it is something to maybe consider and to look in. You know, free advice. Take it, throw it away as you wish. So I did enjoy that I was able to eventually build up color depth. You can layer these. They do layer very nicely, as you can see. You can develop these colors. You can build up some really beautiful saturation. You can build up some really lovely contrast. I just wrapped up my essay watercolor review. That's a handmade watercolor from Europe. And I really could not do those things with that watercolor. So it's kind of at the top of my head like, oh, look, how clean and translucent these are. They layer really beautifully. They don't reactivate super much. You can really kind of build them up. And you saw me try to do like a splatter technique there with the yellow. I was hoping to get some more opaque yellow spots to kind of bring in some freshness, and you can see how they kind of disappeared. So that would be one of my problems with Tonic, and it's not like a huge problem. I really like transparent watercolors in general. One of my problems is that they are fairly transparent, so you can't necessarily pull back some highlights by bringing in a darker or a more opaque color. And I also did need to re-ink for clarity. There were some colors that kind of obscured the line art, particularly some of the granulating colors. Re-inking is not an uncommon thing. You guys probably see me do it a lot. And then I'm bringing in some white gouache just to add in some pops, some highlights to clean up the delineation and for there to be just a little bit more contrast going on and to brighten it up a little bit, because I couldn't really do that as much as I wanted to with the watercolors themselves. I'm also mixing the watercolor with a little bit of gouache to get some of those lighter, more opaque colors that I was looking for. And then here is the finished field test. I do like how the bouquet turned out. I'm thinking about offering these bouquets as cards and maybe art prints. So if that's something that you would enjoy and that you might support, please let me know down in the comments below. All in all, in a field test setting, I found these watercolors fairly easy to use, not as opaque as I might like for some of the colors, like some of the yellows, so they don't hold up as much, but they are very transparent and translucent. And if you really enjoy working with loads and loads of layers and lots of color mixing and lots of color blending in both atomic and optical, as well as wet into wet techniques, these could be a really good fit for you and the kind of art that you like to make. I can see these being very popular with floral artists. So that about wraps up my review of St. Louis Art Supply's store brand Tonic Watercolors. And I really enjoyed these. I felt like they had a lot of color, and not just what's in the ceramic little palette dishes here, but just a lot of color comparable to US brands like DaVinci and like Core Watercolors. And these are such a breath of fresh air if you compare them against Case for Making's handmade store watercolors. I found those to be very lackluster. So let's talk about the pros and the cons. The pros are you get, when you buy the ceramic pans, and originally this is what was available first, you get so much paint with these. They're kind of like the big blocks, or kind of like Gensai pans, where you can get larger brushes into these pans very easily, and they're going to last you a long time, and they come with reusable ceramic ramekins. The core mixing set, which is what I have here, is $95 on St. Louis Art Supplies, but they have since released half pans as well as individual of the ceramic ramekins, as well as standard size palettes. So the colors are bright, vivid. If you want, you can buy it in a lot, and it's actually not that much more expensive. It's about twice as expensive as if you bought their palette with the half pans, and you get so much more paint than that. So if you paint large, if you paint a lot, if there's certain colors you just seem to eat, these could be a really good option for you. I really like how they handle. Now, for the cons, and I want to make this clear, overwhelmingly, I like these watercolors a lot. I think they're quality watercolors. I enjoy them. If we lived near St. Louis, I think it would be worth the trip to go get them. You can purchase them online, but then you have to be patient. You have to wait. So, but if you're ordering from Blick, then you got to be patient. You got to wait. So the cons are, originally they only had the ceramic ramekins. That's how I started out with this. It's not very conducive for purchasing and testing. It's actually a very expensive way to test. Thank God I like these colors, because if it had been like Case for Making, I'd be so salty right now. But I like them. These are colors that I will use. The problem is the size. I have a custom palette these are not going to fit in my custom palette. These are not going to fit in a standard palette. So I'd love it if St. Louis Art Supply created some sort of palette option, maybe with magnets, maybe they snap in, to keep these larger ones in place, ideally with some mixing surface as well. I think that would be a wonderful addition to their lineup. And I know they do work with some ceramicists to create their ceramic goods. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility. And it is certainly an idea they may consider. But for me, without there even being like a magnet on the back, I can't even put these in like my standard metal palette. And even if I could, the magnet might not be strong enough to hold them in place. So storage and how I would use them in my studio is definitely a concern for me. Another concern, and it's not going to affect you, it just affects me, is that they rolled out the half pans a little bit later on. So I have kind of a mishmash here, which as a reviewer, it makes storing them a little inconvenient, but you can get the half pans if you just want to try it and see. They also have dot cards, which they didn't have when I purchased these because I would have just gone with the dot cards. So I highly recommend, if you're into watercolor and if you want to see if these are a good fit for you, that you go with their dot cards. They activate very quickly and very readily, and you do get a lot of color, which can make them a little difficult to control. And I know that's a reason some people just prefer not to use core. They find them too intense. Same thing goes for Tonic Watercolors. I'm not really sure if I can call that a con. It's just something I think you should be mindful of. Another con is because these are St. Louis Art Supply's house brand, you can't just go to Blick, you can't just go to David's, you can only find these through St. Louis Art Supply. When they have a website, and they have a lot of cool stuff on their website, and I love browsing their website, so like that's not really a big deal to me, but it is something to be, you know, cognizant of. If they have a color that you fall in love with, you can't just run down to your local brick and mortar and pick up the same thing. That said, their product line is still fairly small. It doesn't have a ton of colors. It doesn't seem like there's a bunch of like custom mixes that you like, for example, like Daniel Smith's Undersea Green, right? Definitely a convenience color. Could totally mix that color myself. I love it, and I literally eat that color. That color is used all the time in my art. So it's just so much more convenient for me to have it as a convenience color, right? Tonic currently does not have any convenience colors like that. So I would say, other than the formulation and falling in love with the formulation, you're not really going to be in a big pinch if you run out of a color. And honestly, if you're buying palettes this size, it's not going to run out for a really long time. So what is my verdict on St. Louis Art Supply's Tonic Watercolors? I really like these, and I think for these ceramic pans, they have a specific audience in mind. I could definitely see floral watercolorists loving these because you can really get your brush in there. There is a lot of paint to them. They are very, well, that's core, but they're very saturated and rich. You get a lot of color out of them. They're very easy to use. The only problem, again, is the storage, which may not be an issue for floral watercolorists because you don't need all the colors in the world for this. And their core mixing set could be a great option for you. I also think these are wonderful if you paint at home. You don't have to travel with these, and you paint big. So for someone like me who uses a lot of ultramarine blue, this is perfect. This is perfect for painting comic pages. It's perfect for painting skies. I can just plop the ramekin down and then pick it up when I'm done with it. No big deal. It did handle generally the way I wanted it to. The colors that granulate quite a bit, and you can get uneven mixes. And as a watercolor comic artist, it's hard for me to judge these because I opted to do a floral illustration rather than an illustration of people. And it was just kind of based on the colors that I had and not wanting to spend a bunch of more money to be able to complete this review. So if I end up picking up a few more colors and I end up doing like a Lilliputian Living field test, I may adjust my opinion. I may be able to speak more about, oh yeah, this is a great palette for painting people, or some of the color mixes fall out of solution quickly, which is what I noticed with these. Now that said, I was painting on a very shallow ceramic palette, so that might be why some of the color mixes evaporated and fell out of solution so quickly. That's one of the interesting things about working and reviewing with watercolors is you just change one or two aspects. You change your subject matter, you change even your palette where you're not using these super deep wells like I do when I'm painting people, and it changes how the watercolors handle and what you can discuss about them. So if there's interest, if you want to know if these are good for painting people, let me know down in the comments below. Let me know in my Discord server. Reach out to me and let me know. I need to hear from you guys. And I'll go back and finish it, or it is finished, but go back and retest it. As it stands though, I think these are a wonderful option for people who paint large, maybe in a classroom setting too, if people are willing to share. I know that does not always happen in classroom situations, believe me. As well as if you enjoy painting florals, especially if you want to be able to get that whole brush in there and really pick up a whole bunch of paint, and you're kind of stymied by the size of traditional half pans, and Gensai is not necessarily doing for you what you were hoping that it would do. Put these watercolors through the paces. While I do really like the larger pan size, I don't necessarily think this is a good fit for every studio or for every artist, because right now it's really hard to kind of handle these. They do move around on the desk somewhat if you're putting a brush in, you're trying to, pick up some paint. And currently St. Louis Art Supply does not have a palette for these. So if they introduce something that these would magnet into or slot into to kind of hold it steady, I would like these a lot more. That's not to say I don't like them, and it's not to say I don't recommend them. There are some colors that we use constantly, or we need in great quantity, or we need a larger pan because we're painting a larger area. Like ultramarine blue is one of those colors for me. The mixing set has some really strong color choices, and the colors are quick to activate and very vivid. If you are a vegan, these are also a good option because St. Louis Art Supply claims that their tonic watercolors are vegan watercolors. So that might be a good option for you. I thought the colors were bright, very pretty, mixed fairly easily. They compared quite favorably against 3 other American brands, and I do kind of wish I'd also pulled out the M grams to swatch those as well. And I also want to point out that I know Cheap Joe's is going out of business, but the American Journey paint are actually manufactured by DaVinci, so there's no point in testing out the American Journey paints. That's a white label from DaVinci. In general, I liked how these handled. I do feel that there is some fairly assertive granulation with the ultramarine blue, which I love. I love a clean granulating ultramarine blue, and that is definitely what they're delivering here. But if you work smaller like I do, it can make some muddy mixes for some of the purples. That said, I was actually trying to encourage granulation and color separation when it came to the Louisiana irises in this bouquet. I was able to mix the colors that I needed with the mixing set and the addition of 3 half pan colors, and they do actually have half pan palettes available. So if you like what you heard about these watercolors, but you don't need a bunch of ceramic palettes around because you don't have the space or you just don't need them, it is kind of an expensive thing, they do have half pans. That said, these ceramic palettes hold a lot of paint. So if you paint larger, if you're doing maybe like loose watercolor florals where you might want to get your whole brush in there and a half pan might be a little small for you, or if space isn't an option, these ceramic discs hold a lot of paint, and I feel like they're a pretty good bang for your buck. So I really enjoyed having the opportunity to buy and try Tonic Watercolors. These were purchased out of pocket using funds that I generate from teaching art classes, as well as from my Patreon. So if you enjoy what I do and you want to help me to continue to do it, you can join me at patreon.com/natosoup. I have a huge backlog of art supplies to review, and I am in general, some of them are from China, some of them are from AliExpress. I will be pulling away from that in the future because paying tariffs on things like that is just not something I can afford at this time. But I do want to review the supplies that I already have and get to talk about them. So I am going to be trying
increasingly to review American-made art supplies, American-made books, just because it's a little bit easier for me and because it means I can support fellow small businesses, which is really important to me as a small business. Speaking of, if you like my art, you can purchase art prints in my shop at natosoup.com/shop. You can also find charming watercolor comics as well as coloring books and Lilliputian Living, my exploration of tiny life. So if you like to support indie creators, if you like to support small makers, if you like to support creatives, you can help me fulfill my dreams and chase, my journey. Wow, I worded that so weirdly. You can help me with that by acquiring your own beautiful art and art books at natosoup.com/shop as well. And if you're a sticker fiend, I have some beautiful waterproof vinyl stickers in the shop as well. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, consider sharing it on Discord, on Facebook, on Reddit, any group or community that you think would find this interesting. Your positive word of mouth helps so much, and I always really appreciate it. So that is a giant way that you can help me without spending a single dime, and it really means a lot to me. If you are not subscribed, make sure that you click the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, do all the doodly-doo so that you do not miss a video, and hopefully I will see you guys again soon with another art supply review. Wow. The wording is hard. The ADHD is much today. All right, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. See you guys again soon. Bye, guys.